and welcome to Getting Started with Xcode. My name is Prachi, and I'm an Xcode engineer. Along with my colleagues Holly and Hansa, I'll be walking you through how you can build a simple iOS app using Xcode. Xcode is an integrated development environment used for developing software in Swift, Objective-C, and other languages. In this session, we'll be covering how you can create a new project using Xcode, write and navigate your source code in Xcode's source editor, run and debug any issues that may exist within your code base, extend the functionality of your app using packages and frameworks, and finally, how you can test and distribute your app to the App Store. Let's get started with creating a new project in Xcode. In front of you, you see the Xcode window, which I'll be discussing in 4 different sections. In the center section is the source editor, where you can view and edit all of your files. In particular, we have the source editor open, and you can use it to navigate and edit all of your source code. There are other editors available to you, such as the project editor, and here you can customize your project settings when you need to. Within the project editor, you will find targets for your app. A target contains instructions to build one product. Examples of products include libraries, frameworks, test bundles, and the app itself. To the very left of the Xcode window is the navigator, where you have quick and easy access to all of the content within your project. You can use the navigator selector bar to select a navigator. You have many available to you. And because we have the project navigator selected, you can use it to add, delete, group, or otherwise manage all of the files that exist within your project. On the very right is the inspector, and it provides you with contextual data about the contents of your editor. Because we have the source editor open, you can view information about the file that's being displayed, such as the file name and the file path. The top section is the toolbar. And here you'll find the Run button, which will build and run your product. The Stop button will terminate the current action in progress. The next 2 drop-down menus are the scheme and the run destination. A scheme is a shareable file that contains rules for how our app will be built, run, and tested. The run destination is where you will run your app. You can choose to run your app in a simulator for a device, such as the iPhone XR, which is what we're doing up here. You can run it on your Mac or a connected device, such as an iPhone or an iPad. The last 3 buttons are the show and hide buttons, which will show and hide different sections of the Xcode window. And these can come in handy. For example, if you're developing code and you need more space in the editor, you can use the rightmost button to close the inspector and provide yourself with that extra space in the editor. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to the Xcode Help menu, where you have access to resources such as developer documentation, release notes, and Xcode Help. Xcode Help is an amazing resource for learning more about Xcode, and we highly recommend that you browse through it on your own. So now that we've walked through the layout of the Xcode window, let's go ahead and create an actual project from scratch. So in front of you is the Welcome to Xcode window. And on the left, you have the option to create a new project, which will store all of your files and resources for your app. You can also clone an existing project that may be hosted on a source control account, such as GitHub. And finally, you can also open up a Xcode playground, which allows you to experiment with your Swift code and then see the results of that code in real time. On the right, are all of the projects that we've been recently modifying, and so we have quick and easy access to them. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project in Xcode. This will open up the template selector. Templates are starting points for our app, and there are a variety of templates that are available for us to use. In order to pick the right template, we need to start out by identifying the platform we're developing for. And I know I'm writing an iOS app, so I'll go ahead and click on the iOS tab. Within this tab, you'll notice that there are two categories of templates available, such as the application templates and the framework and the library templates. For the purpose of this session, though, I'm going to go ahead and select an application template, and I'm going to pick the simplest one, which is the single view app, and I'll click Next. So my teammates and I have decided we want to build a meditation application, and we've decided to call it Mind. So for the product name, I'm going to enter in Mind. For the organization name, typically, I would put in the name of my organization, but for the purposes of this session, I am going to call ourselves Example Team. The organization identifier is then the reverse DNS of the organization name. So in this case, it is com.exampleteam. Finally, the bundle identifier is autofilled, and it is a unique ID for your app within Apple's ecosystem. It is a combination of the product name and the organization identifier. For the language, I will go ahead and leave it at Swift because I want to write my app in Swift. And I will ensure that I have UI tests included so that it creates a target for them, because as developers, we want to be in the habit of constantly testing our code. We'll show you later how to add unit tests. So after you click Finish, it'll open up the Save sheet. Here I can decide where I want to save my app. It defaults to the desktop, and I'm happy with that, so I'll leave that as is. But one thing that I do want to ensure is that source control is available from the very beginning of this project so that I can manage, track, and back up any changes that I make during the development process. So I will go ahead and check the Create a Git repository on my Mac checkbox, and I'll click Create. So we have our template set up now. We can add an app icon to our app. App icons are the images that a user will select whenever they want to launch our app. App icons are assets. Examples of assets include images and colors. Assets are managed and organized by an asset catalog, and we can access that asset catalog through the navigator by clicking on it. And because we want the catalog for our app icon, let's go ahead and click on the app icon in the editor. And you'll notice from the catalog that you can have assets for notifications, settings, Spotlight, as well as the app itself. So I have an app icon sitting on my desktop. It's ready to be used. And I have a device that uses 2x resolution. So app assets are available for 1x, 2x, and 3x resolution, depending upon the device you use. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this app icon and drag it into the 2x catalog box for the iPhone app. Now I want to test for the app 2x. So it's for notification. Settings, Spotlight, as well as the app itself. So I have an app icon sitting on my desktop. It's ready to be used. And I have a device that uses 2x resolution. So app assets are available for 1x, 2x, and 3x resolution, depending upon the device you use. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this app icon and drag it into the 2x catalog box for the iPhone app. Now I want to test my app icon to make sure that it actually works. So to do that, I want to run it in a simulator for the iPhone XR. So I'll change my run destination to the iPhone XR. And then I'll click the Run button. This will launch the simulator. And you'll notice that the simulator goes about launching my app immediately. I know this because it's displaying Hello World, and that's what my template is set up to do. So I need to go to the hardware menu to actually see my app icon in the home screen. So I'll go to the hardware menu and click on Home. This will bring me to the home screen, and I see my app icon is there. If I click on the app icon, my app comes back into the foreground. So great, I know that my app icon works. I can terminate execution of the simulator. And now we're at a good point where we can commit and save our changes so that our colleagues Holly and Hansa can continue developing on this project. To do that, we first need to add a GitHub account. We can do that through Xcode preferences, which you can access from the Xcode menu and then going to preferences. Xcode preferences lets you customize Xcode for your needs. And in order to add an account, we'll go ahead and go to the account preference pane and click on the plus button. You'll see that there are a variety of accounts that are available to us. And since we're interested in a GitHub account, we'll click on GitHub and click Continue. So now it's asking me for my account credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my account name and my password. So it's signed into my account, which is great. So I'll go ahead and close Xcode preferences. And now I need to make the actual commit. So to do that, I'll go to the source control menu, and I'll click on Commit. This will open up the commit sheet. And here you can verify all of the changes you made, and you can add a commit message to let your colleagues know what you've changed. So for the commit message, I'll say that this commit will add an app icon. And I'll click Commit, which will close the commit sheet. So now, to get to this point in our development, we started out by creating a project using Xcode. We then chose a template that was appropriate for our platform. We added an app icon to our asset catalog, and then we used Xcode's source control functionality to commit our changes so that our colleagues could continue developing source code. All of the changes, which is great, account credentials, and click on the plus button. And access from the Xcode menu, and then going to preferences. To add a GitHub account, we can do that through Xcode preferences, which you can access from the Xcode menu and then going to preferences. Xcode preferences lets you customize Xcode for your needs. And in order to add an account, we'll go ahead and go to the account preference pane and click on the plus button. You'll see that there are a variety of accounts that are available to us. And since we're interested in a GitHub account, we'll click on GitHub and click Continue. So now it's asking me for my account credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my account name and my password. So it's signed into my account, which is great. So I'll go ahead and close Xcode preferences. And now I need to make the actual commit. So to do that, I'll go to the source control menu, and I'll click on Commit. This will open up the commit sheet. And here you can verify all of the changes you made, and you can add a commit message to let your colleagues know what you've changed. So for the commit message, I'll say that this commit will add an app icon. And I'll click Commit, which will close the commit sheet. So now, to get to this point in our development, we started out by creating a project using Xcode. We then chose a template that was appropriate for our platform. We added an app icon to our asset catalog, and then we used Xcode source control functionality to commit our changes so that our colleagues could continue developing on our project. To learn more about source control, we recommend that you check out the source control workflows in Xcode talk from 2018. Now we're at a point where we can start adding actual meditation functionality to our app. And to do that, I'm going to invite up my colleague, Holly. Thank you.
Okay, so the GitHub is built into the Xcode. So when a developer finishes the project, it will. So when the developer finishes a project, they will transfer the GitHub account, or they will just send you transfer to my account. How does it work?
When a developer finishes a project and wants to transfer it to your GitHub account, they have a couple of options. 1, transfer repository ownership. The developer can transfer the ownership of the repository to your GitHub account. This makes you the new owner of the repository. The developer would go to the repository settings and find the transfer option where they can specify your GitHub username. 2, add collaborator. If you want to keep the repository in the developer's account, but also have access to it, the developer can add you as a collaborator. This allows you to access, contribute to, and manage the repository. 3, you can fork the repository from the developer's account to your own. This creates a copy of the repository under your GitHub account. However, you won't have the same level of control as with a direct transfer. 4, clone and push.
We'll click on GitHub and click Continue. In that you made and project using Xcode form, we added an app icon to our asset catalog, and then we used Xcode source control functionality to commit our changes so that our colleagues could continue developing on our project. To learn more about source control, we recommend that you check out the source control workflows in Xcode talk from 2018. Now we're at a point where we can start adding actual meditation functionality to our app. And to do that, I'm going to invite up my colleague, Holly. Thank you.
Thanks, Prachi. My name is Holly, and I'm an engineer on the Xcode source editor team. And welcome to the source editor. This is where you will write all of the code for your app. To the left of the source code, we have the line numbers. And to the right of the code, we have the minimap, which shows you a miniature view of the file in the editor for navigation. Above the source code, we have the jump bar. The jump bar also helps you navigate the file in the editor using the function pop-up. The jump bar also lets you customize the layout of your editor using the editor options and editor split menus. We are already making great progress on building our meditation app. Let's have a look at where we're headed. We are building a meditation app that allows users to select a duration and meditate for that amount of time. When the meditation is over, the app will write the user's mindful minutes back to their health data. We'll need to add quite a bit of Swift code to get our app working. But instead of trying to read the code that I write, I want you to focus on the tools that Xcode provides to aid the editing process. And if you're new to Swift, welcome. To get started with Swift, I recommend going through the Swift guided tour, which is available online or in an Xcode playground, so that you can experiment with the Swift code as you walk through the tour. This resource is available on docs.swift.org. And with that, let's head over to Xcode. I added some code to the project template that Prachi showed us to implement timing a meditation and drawing a peaceful background for the app. We still have to implement a UI for selecting a meditation duration and for starting the meditation. We also have to implement the class that interacts with HealthKit. To get our app up and running really quickly, I implemented a mock health store that does not interact with HealthKit, and we'll implement the real health store later. So here we're looking at the content view.swift from the project template, and I added a title and a background. While building the UI for your app, Xcode can show you a preview of what your UI will look like on an interactive canvas. To show the canvas, we can select the editor menu and click Editor and Canvas. The canvas will build and run your code as you edit so that it can show you the results of your code in real time. So now in the preview, we can see the welcome title and the peaceful background. Next, I want to add a meditation view. So I'll create a new file, and I'll use the SwiftUI view file template. And I'm going to call this meditation view. Right now, the preview is showing me a full device, but the view that I'm working on is only taking up a small portion of the screen. I can modify the preview provider, which is what's supplying the view to show on the canvas, to only show the view that I'm working on, using the preview layout modifier. When I start to type the modifier, Xcode will bring up the code completion window. This shows me a list of suggested symbols based on the text that I typed, as well as the surrounding context of the code. The modifier that I want is the first one in the completion list, and I can press Enter to accept the suggestion. Now Xcode inserted the symbol into the editor along with a placeholder for me to fill out the remaining code. And I'll fill that out now with size that fits. Next, I know that my meditation view will need to interact with a meditation controller. So I'm going to add a property wrapper that wraps a meditation controller. And I'll resume the preview. If you're unsure of what a certain API does in the source editor, you can view documentation for that API by holding down Option and clicking on the symbol that you want to view documentation for. This will bring up the Quick Help popover, which shows me the declaration of the symbol along with its documentation. Before we move on, I need to supply a meditation controller using the environment object modifier. Now, let's start building up this view. Right now, we have text that's showing us hello world, and I want to change this to show the remaining time for the meditation, which I can get from the meditation controller. And as I updated the code in the editor, the preview updated to reflect this change. Now, the text looks a little small to me, and I can make it larger using the inspector. So I'll show the inspector from the button in the Xcode toolbar, and I'll click on the attributes icon. Then I'll click on the view that I want to inspect. And here I can see the values of all of the modifiers being applied to this view. Right now, the font is inherited, and I can change it by clicking on the menu and selecting large title. When I do that, the preview updates, and the source editor automatically adds in the code required to make this change. Above the text, I want to show a button to allow users to pause and resume their meditation. You can add in ready-to-use resources into the file that you're working on using the library, which you can access by clicking on the plus button in the toolbar. The library has different categories of objects, including views, modifiers, and code snippets. Let's look at the code snippets category. Xcode has built-in code snippets, and you can add your own snippets too for fragments of code that you write frequently. Here you can see all of the snippets that I have added to allow us to add code really quickly during this demo. But now I'll switch back to the view category, and I can type in the view that I'm looking for. I can drag in this button into the source editor or directly onto a preview. And now the canvas is telling me that this button will be added to a new vertical stack along with the existing text. When I drop the button, the source editor will add in the necessary code to embed both the button and the text into a vertical stack by adding a VStack. And now I can fill in the placeholders. When we tap the button, we want to toggle the meditation. And rather than showing text, I want to show an icon that's either showing play or pause. Now, finally, I only want to show the remaining time if the user is actively meditating. Otherwise, I want to show a picker with preset meditation durations. Xcode knows a lot about the structure of the code that I have written in the editor, and it can help me transform and refactor my code using structured editing. If I hold down Command and click on a code structure, such as text, Xcode will show me the